well, hello, everyone. Some of you, I think, know who I am already. For those of you who don't, my name's Sam, and I'm the Southampton Council's new ecologist. I started in February this year, so still fairly early days for me. I'm on a 3-year contract at the council, and I've been brought in specifically to work on the council's Green City Plan, which people may or may not have heard of. So that's fine. I don't think that it's necessarily a well-known plan, but it's all about trying to improve the city for its residents and flora and fauna, basically. So yeah, it's as I say, it's a 3-year contract, and I'm working with a lady called Lindsay McCulloch, who's the head ecologist at the council. So just to tell you just a little bit about myself, before joining the council, I was working in ecological consultancy. I think some people think that's sort of the dark side of ecology. So predominantly assisting developers with planning applications, protected species legislation, habitat protection, mitigation, protected species licenses. So that's my background. So very much on the planning and legislation side of things. So this job is totally new, and so far it's proved really enjoyable. Actually, it's pretty much make the position what you want it to be. There's no sort of strict specific sort of objectives necessarily. So I've actually lived in Southampton for 15 years. I live in Shirley, so I know the city fairly well. Although I must admit, before I started working at the council, I hadn't actually ventured into many of the city's green spaces. So I made sure that when I got the job, that I went to all the local nature reserves, the greenways, all of the parks, just so that I could sort of, yeah, know what sort of habitats were in the city. So in terms of what I'm going to talk about, I'll probably talk for about 30 minutes. I haven't run through my presentation necessarily time-wise, but I'm hoping it'll be around 30 minutes. And then if people want to ask questions at the end, that's absolutely fine. Mike has got my email address as well. So if people do want to communicate with me after the presentation, then that's fine. I'm happy for people to email me. So I'll talk a little bit about the Green City Plan, a bit about the Green Grid, which is a fairly new concept, and species plans that I've been working on, ideas that I've got for next year, and then at the end, any ideas that you might have as well for sort of species or habitat projects that I can take away with me. So unfortunately, all of my notes were actually written on the screen and I can't access them. So I'm just going to ad lib. So bear with me. In terms of what the Green City Plan is, it's Southampton City Council's plan to tackle things like climate change, flooding, air pollution, species becoming extinct. So it deals with a whole sort of range of subjects, if you like, all aimed at trying to improve the environment in the city for people, for wildlife, but also sort of, you know, try and tackle the bigger issues really that we're faced with at the moment. The last bullet point, the 5th bullet point, I've put in bold because that's the bit of the Green City Plan that I've been employed to work on. So all of the other areas are being covered by other sort of areas of expertise within the council. So it's just the natural environment section of the plan that I'm going to be working on. So I'll jump right in. In terms of the Green City Plan, as I say, the projects are pretty much, you know, whatever I want to make them, really. And this is why it would be quite good to get sort of some feedback from you as well. So these were 2 little video clips, which unfortunately aren't working. The one on the left was a peregrine falcon devouring a pigeon. And then the one on the right was the peregrine falcon desperately trying to get feathers off its beak, but not being able to, which was quite funny, actually. Unfortunately, they don't work. But I don't know whether people knew that we actually have peregrine falcons nesting in the city. We've got a pair nesting on Norwich House, which is the really tall building opposite the train station. These 2 photos here were kindly taken by a staff member who works in the library. She heard the peregrine falcon screaming at the top of the clock tower, and she put her camera up there, and we've got hours and hours of peregrine falcon footage, which is brilliant. Some of it's a little bit gruesome. It's live pigeons being plucked, but it's all really, really interesting, and obviously very exciting to have peregrine falcons in the city. So next year or the year after, we're probably looking at getting a live feed camera put up on the actual nest. So that'll be, you know, just an awareness raising project, really, because not a lot of people know that we've got peregrine falcons in the city. So another project that I've been working on this year since I started was trying to help the plight of swifts in the city. Hampshire's a bit of a hotspot for swifts, and Southampton used to have thousands of swift nesting sites. Unfortunately, swift populations have halved in the last just over 20 years, and research suggests that this is pretty much down to loss of nesting sites. So I've been working with the Hampshire Swift Society, and we've been providing some additional nest sites for swifts this year, and the project will continue next year and the year after whilst I'm working at the council. So this year we've managed to get some swift boxes up on schools across the city. We focused on schools that were near known swift nesting sites to increase the likelihood of the swifts taking up the boxes. And they're spread across the sort of east, west and central parts of the city. So the photograph in the middle is actually a guy called Ron, who lives just around the corner from me, actually, in Regent's Park. Him and a guy called Roger were the people who were sort of helping me with this project, making the boxes and installing them. So the council actually bought the boxes and then gave them to the schools and put them up for free. So, and then going forward, we'll obviously monitor the boxes and see what uptake we have in terms of swifts. And next year I'll continue with the project. I'm still in discussions with Hampshire Swift Society as to what we're going to do, but we're certainly going to carry on the project anyway. The photograph on the right-hand side is how easy it is really to modify a soffit and provide swift nesting features in it. So I've been having chats with the relevant staff members in the council who are involved in both new builds but also repairing existing buildings, to see whether when we come to repair buildings, be it commercial or residential, is there any way that we can actually provide swift nesting sites in our buildings, in the Southampton City Council owned and managed buildings? So I'm hoping that that's going to be possible, in which case we could provide hundreds of nest sites going forwards, and it's not a very costly exercise at all. That's in terms of sort of Swifts, that's the project, well, that's the work that I've been doing so far. I'm also looking at getting planning policy changed as well. We've got a new local plan that's coming up for renewal in, I think it's probably a couple of years' time, 2023. And I'm hoping that we can get some policy wording in there in relation to Swifts and providing additional Swift nesting sites in terms of new development coming forward. So another project that I've been working on is in relation to bats. I think we've got Vicky Russell in on this talk. So unfortunately, the video on the right-hand side was just a bit of fun, really. In my spare time, I do bat caring, so I'm a member of the Hampshire Bat Group, but also the Hampshire Bat Care Group. So if people find injured bats within Hampshire, there's a group of people who look after them, take them in and, you know, feed them up, and then the aim is to release them as quickly as possible. So this was live footage of a pipistrelle devouring a very large wriggly mealworm, but unfortunately it's the video is not working. But I think Mike is going to put the videos up on YouTube afterwards, so if you do want to have a look at them, you can. The photograph on the left-hand side is of lesser horseshoe bat. So a friend of mine who I used to work with at my previous company, she actually works for Hampshire County Council now, and she let me know that they found a recording of a lesser horseshoe bat near the M271 in Southampton. Which was quite an exciting recording, quite an exciting finding. So I've been working with a guy called Rick from Hampshire Bat Group this season, and I know that Hampshire Bat Group are going to try and do a little bit more work in relation to lesser horseshoe bats and try and find out where the roost is, what areas of the city they might be using in terms of sort of foraging or commuting corridors. They've also got a project in relation to Nethusius pipistrelle, which I've been working a little bit with Rick on that, trying to find out where Nethusius pipistrelle might be in the city. We've been using static bat detectors as well in some of our greenways, just to try and sample what bat species we've got, because although we've got quite a few bat records for the city, we haven't got a sort of a very detailed baseline, if you like. So the idea is, during my position, that we sample as many of the greenways as we possibly can to try and find out what bat species we've got. So far we've recorded, I think, a total of 9 species this summer. We've only done 4 of the greenways out of 8. I also want to have a look at the golf course as well, which Southampton Council have just taken on the management for, and the outside sports centre. So that's the sort of bat project or stuff I've been working on with Hampshire Bat Group. We've also been doing some bat walks as well that local residents are free to, it's free for people to come along to. We did a really successful one at Riverside Park that Phil Budd helped out on. I think we had getting on for 50 people at that, so that was really good. We've also put up some bat boxes in the central parks in the city. So Hoglands Park, Palmerston, East Park, West Park, all of those central parks in the city near the Civic Centre and Guildhall Square, we've actually put up bat boxes in the trees there, which I'll be monitoring probably next year to see whether we've got any bats roosting in them. We've also done a bat survey. A colleague of mine helped me do, we just did one transect through the city parks, the central parks, and had constant foraging activity, which was brilliant. So yeah, that was, I think that's probably all of the sort of bat related project work that I've done this year. I've also done some awareness training as well, actually, for the arboricultural team and the trees team in relation to tree works and the risk of sort of encountering roosting bats. So this is another project that mainly Lindsay has been working on, my boss. It's trying to create areas of meadow across the city. And I'm sure that if, I think most of you, if not all of you, live in Southampton, you've probably seen some of the sites that we've been trying to sort of enhance in terms of creating meadows. It's been a mix of leaving areas to just grow longer and cutting them at the end of the summer. Some of the areas we've actually seeded with wildflower seed. And the photograph on the left, that Victoria Road in Woolston, that's sort of a photograph of a project that probably didn't go particularly well. We're trialing different things because it's a fairly new project, creating meadows for pollinators across the city. This was one of the planters that was actually sown with wildflower seeds, but I think because it's in such a public location on a high street, it didn't work. I think people were expecting it to be more of a sort of a show of colour, a bit more attractive, a bit more pleasing to the eye. And I think in some of the planters, people actually removed the plants and put their own stuff in there. So yeah, maybe not the best sort of place for wildflowers. Or perhaps it just needed a bit more signage so that people knew what was actually happening. And then the photograph on the right-hand side, that's an area of grassland outside of the Civic Centre that was literally just left. I think this was the first year actually that it hadn't been mown. And it was incredible how much ladies' bed straw came up. So all of that yellow there is all ladies' bed straw. It was, yeah, pretty impressive really. And then there were the areas outside of the actual Civic Centre on the eastern side and northern side and outside of the library, which I think the council actually, well, they seeded those with actual wildflower seed. But yeah, that photograph on the right, that was literally just left. I think the soil's really thin in that particular location. So yeah, the flowers just came through. We've actually got, I think it's 144 or 145 sites now across the city, which we term as sort of meadow sites. As I say, a mixture of whether they've actually been seeded or whether we've just relaxed the mowing regime of them. And the idea is that we'll just increase the number of meadow sites year on year. We've had a mix of feedback on those, and I think the key thing is that people just need to know what's going on, and we probably need to provide a bit more awareness, whether that's via leaflets or signs or information on the website. But yeah, that's it's definitely been sort of a mixed bag, I would say. And then next year we're going to, we know what's on our sites that we've actually sown with wildflowers, of course, because we've got the seed mixes. But in terms of sites where we've literally just relaxed the mowing, like here outside the Civic Centre, we're going to start doing surveys of all of those sites so that we can create a baseline of what we've actually got. And then when we continue with the management of the sites, we can see how they're responding and compare them sort of year on year. And Phil Bird has very kindly offered to help with that. So we just need to get a group of volunteers together as well, because it's going to be quite a big project. This is, I suppose, call it the hedgehog project, but it's not just restricted to hedgehogs. When I started at the council, there'd been an unfortunate incident with hedgehogs that had accidentally been strimmed. I think it was over sort of New Forest Way, which was really, really sad. But I thought, well, I'll sort of take the plunge and go and chat to the maintenance guys, the people who are actually sort of on the mowers doing the strimming, and see whether they were up for some wildlife awareness training, and they were like really pleased to for me to go and chat to them. So that was sort of a wildlife awareness raising, generally speaking, for things like nesting birds, amphibians, reptiles, and also hedgehogs. So the idea is that I will probably do update training each year, and I'm going to produce a calendar as well for the guys to keep in their vans, so that they know what to look out for at different times of the year and what species might be more susceptible in sort of, spring, summer, autumn, winter. And then they've got my contact details as well, so that if they need to contact me for any reason, then that's absolutely, fine. And I've had a few telephone calls already, which is great. So they've obviously sort of listened and taken it on board. And so as part of that wildlife awareness training that I did, we got stickers. That the photograph on the left is from the British Hedgehog Preservation Society. So we're on their roll of honour as hog champions now. So there's a list of organisations and councils that are sort of aware of the plight of hedgehogs and doing their best to try and avoid any accidental injuries. So Mike, how am I doing for time? Okay, I'm just going to
sorry, I've muted myself. You got plenty of time.
That's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
How am I doing for time? Is it okay? Yeah.
Yeah, you're only up to 8 o'clock. That's fine.
Okay, fine. So in terms of sort of other projects that I've been working on, I mean, obviously I haven't been at the council that long, and there's lots of stuff that I want to do, lots of other projects that I want to get started on. But other projects that I've managed to work on this year are sampling some of the water bodies in the city for great crested newt. So I've done some eDNA sampling. Lindsay was quite keen on which water bodies she wanted sampling, so that's how that was decided. Whether it's sort of she knows that there's work going to be done on those water bodies in the near future, or whether there were historic records of great crested newts. So, and then the idea is that I'll continue with that next year and the year after as well, to try and sample all of the water bodies if I can. It's a fairly cost-effective way of finding out whether you've got great crested newts or not, rather than the more sort of labour-intensive way of surveying for them. I have set up a dormouse monitoring site as well in the north of the city at the crematorium and the sort of surrounding woodland there. And I'd like to set up another site next year. I haven't decided where that is yet, possibly the golf course. And I'd like to trial the footprint tunnels rather than perhaps using the standard nest boxes. We haven't found any dormice yet, but we only put the boxes up in, I think it was May this year, so it's still early days. The lovely blushing maiden photo there of the moth. Myself and a colleague in the trees team, she's very, very into her moths, and we did a couple of moth trapping evenings this summer. One was at the Hawthorns urban centre on the common, and we had quite a few species of moths there, which was great. I mean, the weather conditions were ideal. And then we also set the trap in my back garden as well, which sounds a bit odd, but considering I live in Shirley, but I'd like to do an inventory of all of the species that I can record in my garden, because it's such an urban location, and it would be great to, so I suppose, surprise
Okay, looks like we've got a technical problem. Sam, are you back?
Yeah, sorry, I am back. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So in terms of other projects, so yes, I was talking about invasive species. So we've also been working on trying to eradicate invasive species, focusing really on Himalayan balsam, and our maintenance teams are trying to get rid of Japanese knotweed as well, which is an ongoing problem across the city. We've also paired up with the Wildlife Trust, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, with a project called Waste of Space, which has been really successful. Actually, we asked people to identify potential waste of space areas that they feel needed a bit of TLC, needed some planting, making good for wildlife, making good for people. And we've got a huge spreadsheet now of all of those sites, and we're going to try and action, as many of those as we possibly can. Obviously, it'll take time, but it was a good way of sort of engaging with residents in the city to find out what potential wastes of space were on their doorstep that they'd like to see things done to, and any ideas that they had to improve those. So that's another project that we'll be taking forward next year. So I'm not gonna go into a huge amount of detail with the green grid. I haven't got a nice photograph of this because we don't actually know what it's going to look like yet. Southampton University have got a GIS department which is called the Geodata Institute, and they have been crunching quite a lot of data, such as heat maps, noisiest areas across the city, deprivation, people's health, flooding, flood risk, absolutely all sorts of data to try and come up with a green grid map, which essentially will be a map of all of our existing green areas and grey areas, and trying to come up with a plan and ideas of how to link those green areas up, be that tree planting on streets, creating more meadows, green walls, rain gardens, green roofs, green facades. So all of that sort of green infrastructure, where is it needed, and how are we actually going to deliver it? Falling out of that green grid map work will be an action plan. How are we going to actually do this? And a funding plan. So how are we actually going to pay for these projects, these greening projects? And who's actually going to be helping us deliver that action plan as well? For the future as well, in terms of the Southampton's new local plan, which I think it's in 2024 that's going to be actually finalised. There will be quite significant changes in terms of planning policy wording. So obviously, if we've got this green infrastructure across the city that's all connected, we need some way of protecting it as well against development. One of the key things that came out of the research that Southampton University have done is the amount of gardens that have actually disappeared over time, front gardens, because people need more car parking space. So we have hundreds and hundreds of dropped curb applications come through the council each year, suggesting that those front gardens are going to be paved over, become impermeable, they've got no wildlife value at all, and we need to try and consider how we're actually going to protect you know, the green that we've got, and stop it from disappearing, really. So that is the green grid work. That's quite a major piece of work, actually. And we're going to be consulting with people on that next year. We've gone through our internal consultation stage, and then hopefully by the end of December, we'll actually have a draft green grid map of the city, showing all of the green and grey areas and how and ideas for how we're going to link those up. And then that will be out to public consultation, including obviously yourselves from the Southampton Natural History Society, other specialist groups, special interest groups, and members of the public will all be invited to provide comments on that, so that we can make it as realistic and deliverable as possible, and it's not just some, you know, pie in the sky random wish. We want it to be, you know, really, really realistic and deliverable. So Mike suggested it might be useful for me to sort of include a slide on maybe how people can get involved, or what people can do at a local level. I mean, in terms of work that's going on in the city, there are various projects that I'm going to be continuing with next year and the year after, whilst I'm employed at the council. Phil's going to help with training up some volunteers so that we can monitor our meadows So that's somewhere that people can definitely help. We've got various friends of groups to look after our parks and open spaces, but quite a few of those haven't actually got any friends of groups at all, and the council just don't have the resources to obviously look after them alone. So there's always an opportunity to form or join a friends group. We've got a list of all of the friends of groups that we've actually got at the moment, and those sites that are missing having sort of a group to look after them. Obviously, I'll want your feedback on the green grid map. And in terms of sort of helping wildlife on your doorstep, I don't need to explain what you can do, because I know that you're all sort of very aware of that already. But me and my neighbours have got swift boxes upon our houses, which I think we've probably got about 20 now, I think, in our road. So that's been great. People walk past your house and sort of want to know what that box is stuck on the front of it, and then people have just put orders in for them that I've spoken to just in passing. So I think it's sort of infusing people and engaging with people, and just getting, if everyone just does a little bit, it will hopefully improve things across the city in time. Obviously, having a messy area in your garden, having a pond, creating gaps for hedgehogs, putting up bat boxes, bird boxes, planting pollinator species in your garden, all of that sort of stuff is obviously really, important and very easy to do at a local level. And then that's my last slide. Hopefully I haven't rambled on for too long. The photograph in the middle is the lovely show of wildflowers that we had outside the Civic in the summer. So yeah, that's it from me. So I think if people have got questions, happy to answer whatever I can. I might have to go back to other people in the council if I can't answer them, because I'm fairly new at the council, so I know a minuscule amount of people that I need to, and then Mike has my email address as well, so I'm happy for people to contact me.